Hi there, my name is Sindre, and at some point in my life I was the youngest associate professor in Norway. So how did I manage to pull that off? Well, before I give you my answer, I will just provide a little bit more context before we dive into it. Statistics Norway kept track of every single person who started a PhD in Norway between 1st of October 2012 and 30th of September 2013. After 5 years, this is what happened to these 1,625 people. At the 5-year mark, 51.8% of the candidates had successfully defended their dissertation. Analogously, 48.2% had not. And among these 48%, 22.5% had officially given up, while the remaining 25.7% were still pursuing a PhD. How many of these will actually eventually finish and who will also give up, we don't know. But among the 51.8% who finished, it's interesting to note that only 16.3% finished within 3 years. And between 3 and 5 years, 35.5% finished additionally. Now, most PhD contracts are either 3 years or 4 years if you have additional teaching duties. So let me repeat that. Only 16.3% finished on time if you assume that all of them had a 3-year contract. Not everyone does, however, so the numbers are slightly better, but still. The vast majority of candidates do not finish their PhD project on time. I successfully defended my dissertation about 4 months before my 3-year contract officially ran out. But I submitted my dissertation about 8 months, more like 7.5 months maybe, before the contract ran out. But already then I had been sitting around for a month or 2 maybe, not really doing anything on the dissertation, so I kind of just submitted it. So how did I do that? Some people think that's kind of a big deal, finishing before time. As we looked at the statistics, the median PhD student finishes after 5 years, only 16.3% within the 3-year contract. So how did I do that? So I was invited in my administration to talk to the new batch of fresh PhD candidates about to embark on this interesting endeavor of writing a doctoral dissertation. So I come there and a microphone is shoved up my face, and I'm asked can I give my top 3 advices or tips or tricks or secrets to the trade. So I think to myself, I wasn't the only one there, the first person who went, kind of really depressing story to tell. So I thought I would try to lighten up the mood a little bit. So I tried to just speak directly from my soul. So I thought, okay, 3 tips and advices. Number 1. It is never too late to give up. That was my first advice. I see the event organizer is looking at me a little bit flabbergasted and shocked. I was admittedly being a little bit hyperbolic and facetious when I said that, but I have a pretty good reasoning behind it. So my second advice that I was giving on stage was that finishing a dissertation is kind of like getting a boyfriend. You just have to lower your standards. And as I was about to say my third advice, the event organizer comes and kind of pulls the microphone away and tries to guide me into the correct answer that I'm supposed to give, I think. So according to people who are not me, how did I do this? So according to administration, they pointed out 2 things for me. Surely it must have been because I have an amazing supervisor. And yeah, that is absolutely true. I had an absolutely amazing supervisor. I couldn't ask for anyone better. Without my amazing supervisor, I definitely wouldn't have been able to not even finish on time, but probably not finish at all. So there's no denying that. Very open about that. However, the reason I don't like to point it out is it's not very useful advice, to be honest. For the vast majority of PhD students, you just get assigned a supervisor. And some supervisors are not as good as others are, and not just in absolute terms, but in terms of being a compatible fit with a particular candidate. And it's out of your control. You can't really do anything about it. But yes, it is true. I had an amazing supervisor, but I don't think that's a very useful advice to give. Also, according to administration, good hypothesis, according to them at least, for why I finished on time is because administration is doing such an amazing, fantastic job. And yeah, I'm sure they do. But again, what can you actually do about this? It's not an actionable piece of advice. Administration is orthogonal to whatever you are doing as an individual. So not very useful advice if you ask me. So another hypothesis that I've been told, an explanation for how I managed to do what I did, is that I have a white male privilege. And that could certainly be true, but unfortunately the nature of privilege is that it is invisible to the person who is being privileged. So I cannot really say anything about that. It could be true, maybe it isn't, or to what extent it is true, I don't know. It certainly could be an explanation, but again, it's not very useful advice. You can't just magically get privilege if there is privilege, right? So what can you do about that? Nothing. So a fourth and final hypothesis that I've been presented with is that I'm just lucky, just extremely lucky, always in the right place at the right time. And yeah, that sounds about true. Certainly I'm a very lucky individual, but once again, what exactly can you do about that? You can't really choose your supervisor. You can't really choose your administration. You can't choose to have privilege, at least I think you can't choose that, and you can't choose to be lucky. So I don't know how much these four hypotheses explains of me finishing on time, but let's just say that is whatever percentage. It could be 15%, it could be 75%, it could be 99%. But as long as there is like one residual percentage here, which is caused by choices I made, I think that's valuable to talk about. So let's talk about why I succeeded, according to me at least, and this could just be like a tiny percentage left for all we know. But nevertheless, let's talk about it. So once again, how did I do it? And this time, according to myself, I think the answer is pretty simple. It is because I was applying project management techniques. Now, when I was a student, a bachelor master student, it was right after the financial crisis. And every single course I took, the professor or the lecturer in the course would claim that they alone knew why the financial crisis happened. And it was because of whatever it is they were teaching in each of their respective courses. And it sounds a little bit stupid, but I'm basically doing the same mistake myself right now. So I teach project management. Maybe that's why I believe that the key to success here is to use project management technique. Now, I teach project management to master students, and I also had the pleasure of getting to supervise some of them a year later when they're doing their master thesis. And what I always notice is that they don't realize that the master thesis is a project. They don't realize that they can apply what they learned in project management course. They can apply that to doing the master thesis. So many, or maybe even all, of the errors and mistakes that my master students are making, pretty much all of that could have been prevented if they were just to use simple project management techniques, just very, very basics. So I think the same applies here to the doctoral dissertation, to the PhD candidate. You need to realize that you are dealing with a project, and you need to apply project management techniques. That can help out a lot. So one of the advice that I gave is that finishing a doctoral dissertation is like getting a boyfriend. You just need to lower your standards. So let's analyze this from the perspective of project management. Not to go too much into the theory here, but the project management is basically defined as managing projects successfully. And project success is defined as being able to bring about the project deliverables within the three fundamental constraints of time, cost, and scope. A very good way of ensuring that a project fails is to mindlessly pursue only one of the constraints. If you only focus on the budget, for instance, or the schedule or the scope, then probably two of the other constraints will suffer. And it's my belief, based on my anecdotal observations of interacting with other PhD students, it's my belief that too many PhD students are kind of focusing too much on the scope at the cost of going over the schedule. So what I believe is happening is that PhD students are pursuing perfection. They want to add more and more and more stuff into their articles and into their monographs. And that's not a very good idea when it comes to project management. What they're doing is what in project management called for scope creep. So the scope just keeps increasing and increasing and increasing. And of course, that means that the budget is going to overrun. They get more and more cost overruns, and at the same time, you accumulate more and more delays. So a PhD student that is too focused on the scope and that is experiencing scope creep, I think what they need to remember is that doing a PhD is kind of a pass-fail exam. And when it comes to pass-fail tests, the best kind of performance you actually can give is a performance that is so bad that you almost fail. Another advice that I gave was that it's never too late to give up. And yeah, that kind of sounds wrong, but I think there's actually a lot of things to back this up. First of all, that wasn't really my idea. This is something I heard a long time ago on the Freakonomics podcast. Here is the specific episode. But basically, what I think is, I think we generate a lot of ideas, and many of those ideas are terrible. So this is kind of related to scope creep again, but I think it's important to be able to kill off bad ideas. And I think the big difference really between a PhD student and a professor is not that the professor necessarily has a higher success rate in terms of coming up with good ideas. I think both the professor and the PhD student are both coming up with a lot of bad ideas, but I think the professor is better at killing off the bad ideas. They're better at focusing their limited resources. So again, in project management, you kind of need to you pick your battles, need to focus your attention and effort and resources into viable solutions. So looking at other PhD students, I see they get ideas and they never give up on them. But I think if you are going to succeed in terms of your schedule at least, then you kind of sometimes have to give up. And this is not just me and the Freakonomics podcast. This is also an idea that is explored in this book right here, Grit by Angela Duckworth. So I think this book gives a very good answer to how to determine whether or not something should be given up on and whether you should pursue it. So according to the book, what you should do is to create a hierarchy of goals and objectives. The higher up you are in this goal hierarchy, in this objective hierarchy, the more you should pursue it with passion and grit. And the further down in the hierarchy you are, the higher should probability be of you to abandon the goal. It is perfectly fine to abandon goals that are very low in the hierarchy, but the higher up you go, the more you need to have the attitude, the behavior of never giving up. So sometimes you have to give up. Use the goal hierarchy to determine when to. So the final and third advice that I actually never got to tell, what was it? I honestly don't remember anymore. So I guess we'll just end the video right there, but just to summarize, according to me at least, the secret to being successful in terms of time when it comes to doing a PhD is to use project management techniques. And there are quite a lot of specific techniques I would like to talk about, but we can't fit that into just one video, so maybe one day I will return to that. But in short, use project management techniques. If you're writing a master thesis or a doctoral dissertation, what seems to be causing, or all the errors and issues that is causing delays, so many of them could have been prevented if the candidate or the student was just using like the very, very basics of project management. That is at least my insight, but remember that I am just one person, and there's nothing more unique in education than doing a PhD. A PhD varies from university to university, it varies from faculty to faculty, it varies from study program to study program, so it varies from PhD student to PhD student. So always just takes whatever kind of advice you get with a grain of salt. But if you were to ask me, I think the secret here is project management. So thank you for watching, like, subscribe, that kind of things, hit that bell for notification, and blah blah blah. So yeah, thank you. See you around. Good luck on your dissertation or thesis or whatever.